Welcome everyone to our HU TED Talks. This talk is by Dr. Sam Minner, of course, our president here at Highlands, and we're so glad to have you all with us. Just a couple quick items before we begin. Each day of Homecoming Week, we are featuring one of our foundation funds as our daily giving opportunity. Today's featured fund is the Rio Mora Wildlife Refuge, and I think some folks on this call have been there and know how gorgeous and beautiful it is, and how peaceful and wonderfully deserving of support and preservation it is. So please consider giving. If not to today's fund, we'll have a different fund each day of Homecoming Week. And all of our giving opportunities are at our webpage, nmhufoundation.org. I also want to thank, we do have some sign language interpreters with us on today's call. We're thrilled to have them, and we thank them for helping us with today's presentation. Please also check our daily specials at nmhufoundation.org/shop, where we'll be running a daily discount special on some of our alumni merchandise and gear. I believe today's discount is on our new NMHU blankets. So
and I've seen that. That's nice. Yeah.
They are kind of nice. I like them.
Yeah.
And with no further ado, Dr. Minner, I will let you take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, everyone, for joining me this afternoon. The title of my TED Talk is Plato Goes Fly Fishing. I'm not absolutely certain that Plato ever went fly fishing. I'm kind of guessing he didn't. But I'm going to try to connect these two things as best I can. Let me see if I can share this. Well, if I can share, there we go. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. We got really just a brief introduction, and then we're going to talk about the instruments of fly fishing, preparation, engagement, and then a little surprise at the end. Most of you have heard or know about Plato. He's one of the most famous Greek philosophers in the history of the world. He had a lot of ideas about the world. He essentially thought that men and women were basically good, but they could be a lot better if they kind of followed his recipe for leading a good life. He talked about studying and practicing what he called the contours of life, or the forms of life. Plato, as you know, was kind of the #1 student of Socrates. And then Plato's most famous student, of course, was Aristotle. So the big three Greek philosophers of all time. Plato particularly is considered kind of having specialties in the roots of Western spirituality. And also, as I previously mentioned, ideas about the nature of a full and good life. So he said that these were what he referred to as the forms of life or the contours of life. Roughly, we might kind of call them the stages or phases of life. I think phases is probably a better term than stages. He talked about the instruments. So kind of clarifying in your own head as a man or a woman on earth, the instruments or the tools that you want to kind of focus on to lead an excellent life, a good life. For example, he didn't think that people were necessarily born courageous, but lots of people aspired to lead a life of courage, be known as a courageous man or woman. So you had to kind of set on that and then practice that over a period of time. We'll get to that in a second. Or what about integrity? That's one of the forms, or what he calls the contours of life. A lot of people then and now, of course, aspire to lead a life of integrity and be known as a person of integrity. So if that's what you wanted to focus on, then you needed to do that, and you needed to practice it a certain way. The second contour or form was the preparation. So that's your behavior. really practicing it. Again, people weren't born courageous, but you could practice it, especially as a young person. And over time, you would take that on and you would be a courageous man or woman and be known as such. Then he talked about the engagement. That's really kind of midlife. Of course, midlife back then in ancient Greece was not midlife today, but that's where you actually embody, you engaged in these forms or contours. And then finally, toward the end of life, the reflection. He considered that a very important contour or phase, to think carefully about your life, look back on your life, the choices you made, how you practice those skills or ideas. Now, to kind of relate this to fly fishing, the instruments are easy enough to think about, and we'll talk about those in a second, the rod, the reel, etc. The preparation is really getting ready to become an excellent fisherman, a fly fisherman or fly fisherwoman. The engagement is you're engaging in that over many years, probably. And then finally, the reflection of that toward the end of life. So we're using these four ideas, his ideas, the contours or forms of life. Let's talk about the instruments of fly fishing. Let me stop sharing here now for a second. Zoom doesn't lend itself to this very easily, but we'll talk about really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things: the rod, the reel, the line, and the lure. These are the instruments, one of the contours of fly fishing, to use Plato's vernacular. Fly rods come, there's so many different kinds. I have so many, it's ridiculous. And this is a graphite fly rod. Fly rods have a couple characteristics. They have a length. I mean, if I put this one together, you couldn't see the whole thing. This is about an 8.5-foot rod. And then they also have a number appended to them. And the number corresponds with the weight of line that you use on this rod. So this is an 8.5-foot graphite fly rod, and it's a 4-weight rod. So if you wanted to buy some fly line for this, you would need to buy 4-weight. It's interesting, when it comes to line, the lower the number, the smaller the diameter of line. So a 3-weight line that goes on a 3-weight rod is smaller than a 4-weight. An 8-weight rod, I have one of those. I have a 10-weight rod. That's kind of a saltwater thing. That's for really big water and generally for large fish. So that's a graphite rod. Here's the rod that I actually had in my youth. This is a fiberglass rod. It's hard to see, I'm sorry. Maybe that's a little better. This was a very inexpensive rod. I bought it literally as a kid, you know, and it still is today. I was out at our local Walmart. I'm not plugging Walmart or being dismissive of it, but I was out there the other day and I saw that you can buy a fiberglass rod pretty similar to this, actually rod, reel, line, the whole thing, for about 39 bucks. So you don't have to spend a lot. I got other rods. This is one of my favorites. This is my travel rod. It actually fits in the compartment of an airplane. It's 4 pieces, goes together. And so it's great for travel and carrying on airplanes too. Fly rods are long. I have some that are 10 feet, as I said. I have broken many of them in car doors, trunk doors. So this one breaks all the way down, so you can travel with it very safely. So that's a little bit about rods. Let's talk about the reel. This reel is called a single action reel. It's the simplest fly reel. This reel really does nothing but hold the line. It doesn't have a drag. You can't fight a fish on the reel. By that I mean you can't just grab it here and let the reel do the work, a drag so that your line won't break. It doesn't have a drag. Now I have other reels that do have drags. This is an Orvis reel. It's pretty expensive. My wife got it for me for Christmas one year. It does have a drag. Oh, I'm sorry, this is really, you saw it for a second. There we go, if you can see it. It looks pretty much like that one, but mechanically and engineering wise, it's a lot more complicated than a single action reel. Single action, no drag. This reel does have a drag, and that makes it a lot more expensive and, you know, better. I'm not sure it's better. I mean, you know, it's just a different kind of thing. Let's talk about the line. Now, I mentioned previously that every fly rod corresponds with a certain weight of line. Again, a 5-weight rod, 5-weight line. 8-weight rod, a big rod, would be 8-weight line. I actually have a 2-weight rod, and the line on that, the fly line, oh, the diameter on it is almost nothing. Generally speaking, the lower those numbers, the smaller fish you're probably going after, and the easier it probably will be for a fish to break your line. Fly line doesn't break, but at the end of the fly line, you have a leader or a tippet. We'll get to that in a second. Fly line also comes in other kinds of varieties. The cheapest fly line, like the one on this eagle claw rod, is called L, level line. All the lines the same diameter. And that costs a lot less than other kinds of line. Like this reel, the other one I showed you, that has a line called DT, double taper. Now what that means is that on one end of the line, it tapers down to a smaller diameter. And then there's the belly of the line in the middle. And then on the other end of the line, right next to the spool, there's another taper. It tapers down again. So when the first taper maybe gets messed up or it's not floating anymore or whatever, you could just reverse the line. That's why it's called a double taper. There's also a line called WF, weight forward. And that means that most of the line is a single diameter, but at the end, it actually gets bigger, slightly bigger. That's really handy if you're casting into the wind or you're casting a heavy lure of some kind. Most of the time in fly fishing, you're not casting a heavy lure. You're casting a fly. It has virtually no weight. But so basically the basic lines, there are others. There's level, there's single taper and double taper, and there's weight forward. To make things a little more complicated, fly line comes in a floating variety and also a sinking line. So obviously, if you're fishing dry flies, flies that float on the top, you want floating line so the fly doesn't sink. If you're fishing maybe nymphs, they're called, some streamers, most streamers, you want those to be on or near the bottom. You want a sinking line. So that's a little bit about lines. Again, if you don't know anything about fly fishing, this sounds really overly complicated. You can buy a fiberglass rod, about a number 5 or 6 line, a tippet, and then a few flies even at Walmart for like 39 bucks. I just saw one the other day. Let's talk about the leader. So at the end of the fly line, here, again, this is a piece of clear line called a leader, or sometimes it's called a tippet. So that's tied onto your fly line. Let me pull it out and maybe you can see it. There it is. So you maybe see the fly line. I'm sorry, this is fading in and out. And then tied onto the end of the fly line is this leader. Now, you can just use a piece of straight monofilament. That's okay. I've done that a million times. It's not as good, though, as buying a fly line tippet. And what that means is that like single taper and double taper line, it starts out thicker right when you tie it onto your fly line. And as it goes down to the fly, it gets thinner. Now that one, I've heard a lot of theories about why it's called that, but the higher the tippet number, like a 10x tippet, that means the tippet is thinner. It's a higher number, but a 10x tippet is thinner than a 5x tippet. And 5x is thinner than a 1x tippet. Uh, Basically what that means, if you have an 18x tippet, you're not going to be, you better be really careful if you hook a fish, because it could easily break that line, the tippet line, not your fly line. That's almost indestructible. I've never had a fish break that. But if you're fishing for large fish, you don't want an 18x. You want something, a lower number. It makes no sense. Larger fish, lower number, but that's the way that it works. And then finally, you have lures, flies, streamers. There's just literally hundreds of them that you can tie if you want to try to learn that skill, or you can purchase. There's a lot of retailers. There's several good ones in Santa Fe. I buy quite a bit of my stuff online, Orvis, and there are other catalogs. Generally speaking, flies are intended, or initially they were intended to mimic something that the fish were eating. But there's kind of a mythology in fly fishing that you can't catch a trout or any kind of fish unless you have a really close match to what the fish are eating. That's just not true. Fish have been rising, eating a certain kind of thing that's hatching, and I've thrown anything out there, and sometimes I get them. So, but the idea is to get at least kind of close to what they're actually feeding on, if you can. Okay, let's talk about the preparation for fly fishing, that contour, remember, the instruments and the preparation. We talked about the instruments of fly fishing, the rod, the line, the tippet, the fly, the reel. Now let's talk about preparation. Let me see if I can share screen again here. And we'll go to this video. So the rod, the reel, the line, all those are the instruments. And preparation for fly fishing. So please indulge me. Let's see if we can get to this video here. That's me with my shirt tail out, so please forgive me that.
Sam, we can't see the video.
Oh, you can't see it?
No, you might have to stop sharing what you're sharing and then
Okay.
start sharing the video.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can do that. So.
And if not, I can share the video.
Yeah, let's see if you can share it, Terry.
Okay.
Because I'm having some problems doing that, actually.
Oh,
stop share. Okay, I'll stop share. See if you can get it on there.
Alrighty.
I'm still hearing it. Let's see what happens when you bring it up. Can you guys see it now?
Yes, although Terry, I think you need to share your sound so we can hear the video.
Okay, so unshare my sound.
No, Terry needs to share her sound.
Oh, Terry, can you do that?
Yes, hang on 1 minute. I think so.
Should be up in the more options with your screen sharing.
Yep, I'm looking. Let's try that from the beginning, shall we?
Okay, let's see what happens with that.
One moment while it goes back to where it was.
Okay, let's try that. Okay, there's the beginning.
Everybody. This is Sam Minner, president of New Mexico Highlands. Thanks for joining me for this segment of my presentation. If you recall where we were just a few minutes ago, our discussion, Plato talked about the second contour.
Maybe the best thing to do, Terry, can you mute it and I'll just talk over this demonstration.
Preparation. He called it a couple
Can you
things,
still
but
not hear the
one
sound?
common translation is the preparation. Getting ready for
We
a
have a
life of
couple
meaning
going, it
and
looks like.
purpose and a good life, as he would put it. So Plato didn't believe that people were born with these contours or these
Oh, hang
abilities,
on.
like courage. If you wanted to be a person
Sorry,
of courage,
everybody.
then you practice being courageous. If you wanted to be a person of integrity, then you lived your life that way.
Let me just pause that. Is that,
Okay.
did you still hear the sound on it after I tried to mute it?
I can hear the sound, but it's not linked with the video, but I can talk over. If you can mute your sound, let's try something.
All right, hang on. Would you like me to start it from the beginning?
Yeah, see if you can. Okay, try now.
All right.
How's that?
Oh, it does not want to let me mute. Hang on.
Well, that's okay because I'm just hearing one track now.
Okay.
Yeah. You guys not hear the sound? Oh, can you hear me? Okay, well, I'll dub over. So, that first demonstration was a forward cast, the 10-2 4-beat motion. So now what I'm going to show you now is the second most common cast, the roll cast. Well, that's still the forward. Yeah, 1-2 back, 3-4 forward. So the wind was pretty heavy that day, so it pushes the line. So you would cast a little bit to the right of where you really want to go in order to set your fly down where it's supposed to be. Yeah. Okay, that was the forward cast. If you got any of that 4-count beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 2. Now this next cast is called the roll cast. If you got a bunch of brush behind you and weeds and trees, you need to do this roll cast. And to do roll cast, you push your rod down, loading it with energy, And then before it comes up, we have a circular motion. Hopefully you can see that in with my hand here pretty soon. Okay, let's watch. Let's see. That's my line out there. You can't see the end of it. This is the roll cast coming up here now. Roll cast you have to use around here all the time because the streams are so small and there's always stuff behind you, trees, brush. Now watch this if you could see what this looks like here. See, push that rod down, put some energy into it, but before it comes back up, then you make that circular motion with your arm to roll the line out. Okay, here it comes. No, we didn't see it. But down hard with your rod, and then a circular motion with your arm, and the line rolls out in front of you. It doesn't really go behind you. It's not supposed to anyway. See, there it is. Now, see that? And then the line, you probably couldn't see, but the line kind of rolled around. And it didn't really go behind me, so I don't have to worry so much about snagging something there behind me. So you use that roll cast, like I said, so often around here. Some of the streams are so small and real brushy, and that's just about the only way to fish them sometimes. Okay, and the third one, it's not really a cast, but here's the last demonstration. Again, I'm sorry on the sound here, I'll have to talk over. But this approach is called the plank. Sometimes it's called the pinch. Sometimes it's called different things. But what you do is you reel your line in a little bit, and then you grab the fly to make sure that the barb is not in front of your thumb or forefinger. Because if you let go then, it will catch you, and I've done that hundreds, if not thousands of times. And you kind of like put some energy in your rod, in the rod, and then you just kind of shoot it out there. This cast, the plank is really, if there's a little hole out in the creek or the river, the stream, maybe it's a 12-inch diameter, maybe it's 18-inch. I mean, it can be small. And the idea is you're going to try to put your fly, you can't cast it there if it's too brushy, but you try to kind of plink it out there and into that hole. That's the idea. And that's a real common way to fish around here too. Sometimes the only way you could do it because you can't do any casting because of the trees and brush, you know. But here you see that energy in the rod, then you hold it, and then boom, let it go, and hopefully try to hit the little open water out there, you know. Actually, the largest trout I've ever caught in New Mexico was with this technique. My son and I were fishing up near Cuesta. I'm not going to say more about the exact location, but there was a hole. I watched, and there was a trout that lived under a cut bank, and it was a large fish. And I don't know how many dozens, hundreds of people walked by that spot all the time because it was so hard to fish, you know. But I saw that trout come up a couple times. And so I waited. And so then I did the plank. There's no way to cast in there. And as soon as the fly hit that little open stretch of water, he came up and the fight was on. Now, it was difficult getting him out of there because of the brush, but I did. And so I got him and unhooked him and threw him back in for somebody else to catch, you know. But the plank is really a common one. So anyway, Terry, why don't you leave this? So I tried to demonstrate. I'm sorry again about the video problems we're having. And can you mute the sound too? Let's see. I don't know if you guys do, but I still hear the video.
Do you still hear it?
I still do, but can you mute it or? Well,
I
let me
have
see if I can.
I totally closed it at my end.
Okay, well, let me try stop share. It didn't do anything on my end. Well, it's almost over. We'll wait. Okay, so let's go back if we can, while that's finishing up, to, here we go. Okay, so the preparation for fly fishing, that contour, according to our friend Plato, is really those three main techniques. Now, there are lots of other techniques. There are another dozen types of casts. But we have the forward cast, the roll cast, and the plank. When I was a kid, I practiced those thousands of times. My mom and dad would be out in the yard swinging in their porch swing, and you know, I had a piece of cardboard. I tried to hit that. Then I had a little paper plate. I tried to hit that. And then for the plank, I would actually get glasses or cups out of the kitchen and just try to put it right in there. And you know, after thousands of practices, I could put it in a cup almost every time, you know, but at any rate. So now the next contour, according to, if you remember Plato's, is the engagement. So practicing, actually doing the things that are important to you, the things that you're trying to make excellent. Being courageous, being a person of integrity, or fly fishing. So I have fly fished in every continent except Antarctica. I love to fly fish. I very often keep this breakdown rod in my car, and if I'm on my way someplace and maybe a little early, I'll stop and just try a couple casts and some little water that I see. It's really been a great avocation for me. This is a picture fishing in Florida. That's my son. That's a redfish. It's a very large redfish, and you see his fly rod there. So, and then this is a very poor picture, excuse me, but it's actually a picture of a picture. This was me on that same trip with another redfish. And now that's saltwater there. So, and I had that, I mean, the redfish we were after that day were maybe 2 or 3 pounds. That's about 9 pounds. So the tippet I had on there was about a 6X tippet. I don't remember where a 6X tippet breaks, but it breaks a lot, much before a fish of that size. A fish that size can easily break that tippet. So that battle, that fly fishing battle, was probably 35, 40 minutes. It took me to get him in on that very light tippet. Really a great battle, wonderful kind of thing. So finally, the fourth contour, according to our friend Plato, reflections. I don't know, we're going to try this again. Should I try it on my end, Terry, to see if we could do it?
Yeah, if you try it on your end, let's see what happens.
Okay, let's see. Well, that's Leveo's video. Yeah. No, this is a commercial, excuse me.
So we can't see it. Again, you might have to stop sharing the Word
Okay,
document.
stop sharing. You want to try to do it?
I sure could.
Well, let's see.
Let's see if I have any better luck.
Okay.
Alrighty. I will try to share it.
I don't see the video yet.
I'll try to share it. It's
Okay.
still loading. Oops.
Let's see, is it still loading, Terry?
Yes. Sorry, we might be overtaxing the broadband at my house.
Maybe so. Let's see if I can do something. Yeah, I don't see it. So, I'm sorry about that. Well, why don't you stop that? I can talk over what's going on here too.
Righty.
So the reflection piece. I don't think there's any better reflection on fly fishing than this very well-known book and a well-known film, A River Runs Through It. This book was written by Norman MacLean. He's an academic. He actually was mainly a teacher. He didn't do that much um, publishing. This is by far his most famous book. And you've probably seen the well-known film. Let me see if I can. Can you guys still hear me now? Okay. So you probably saw the well-known film, A River Runs Through It. It was made by Robert Redford, starred Brad Pitt and several other notable actors and actresses. And we're not going to be able to see that segment. I guess we're over the capacity of our Zoom capability, but I would recommend that you go to YouTube and just Google A River Runs Through It, or plug that into the YouTube, and you'll see the final scene of that film. It's a very, very famous scene. It's the final scene is an older gentleman who's fishing in the river, and I think the imagery there and also the message there is it's pretty easy to understand just at a superficial level. He says that he's in the river. The river's going by him. And he's kind of reflecting on his life while he's fly fishing. And he's saying that everything flows into one. And, you know, I don't want to get into people's spiritual beliefs or religious beliefs necessarily, but that's a very common theme in many, many religions. That my life is very important to me. It's everything to me. But I'm a small part of the grander picture. That I'm in the river that's going to another larger river, to another, and finally emptying out into this great ocean. I'm part of that. I'm part of that story. I'm no more or less important than any other living thing, but I'm part of something much, much, much greater, much larger than myself. And that's, I think, what MacLean was trying to say in that book, A River Runs Through It, and in the film. The film follows pretty closely to the book. The protagonist in the film is named Norman MacLean. The protagonist in the film marries a young woman, Jessie. Norman MacLean married a woman named Jessie. And he was a great fly fisherman. He did it all the time. He lived in Montana for quite a few years, though he did most of his academic work at the University of Chicago. So I think about that a lot myself when I'm fly fishing. It's often such a period of solitude. I don't have a lot of that in my life. I'm not complaining, but I'm there by myself, often in the stream, often in the river, and reflecting on my place in the world as I join all of the other souls, all of the other living things in the world over time, a part of that. And as he says in the final line, the world is old and a river runs through it. So I think about that a lot myself, and I hearken back to the lines in that book. It's a wonderful book. I've read it many times. And as I said, I'm sure many of you have seen the film. So again, relating Plato's ideas, he would say in regard to fly fishing, you're not born a great fly fisherman. You have to identify the instruments of fly fishing. There aren't that many: the rod, the reel, the line, the lure, and then you have to prepare yourself for excellence in life. In regard to fly fishing, that's mainly casting. It can be other things too. And then there's what he calls the embodiment. You actually do that. I fly fished, as I said, every continent in the world except one, over decades of time. Great memories with family and friends. The solitude, the beauty of it, I enjoy very much. And my reflection on things, all kinds of things, including my place in the world when I'm engaged in that. So that's how I relate fly fishing to Plato's ideas. So let's see, can we screen share again? Can you do that on my outline, Terry, or should I do that? Let's see.
Whichever works best. I can certainly pop it up if you
Let me
like.
see if I can do it. Here we go. Okay, so can everybody see this now? There's a picture of Mr. McLean toward the end of his life. I love that quote too. All good things, trout as well as eternal salvation, come by grace, and grace comes by art, and art does not come easy. So to be an excellent fly fisherman, you're gonna have to practice. It just can't be great right out of the box, you know. So in closing here, I have tied some, I'm not a very good fly tire, but in preparation for my session, I have tied some of that fly you see on there, though believe me, the ones that I've tied don't look exactly like that. That's an image from the internet. But I've tied 12 of these muddler minnows. You really can't see it on the screen, but it looks something like what you see on the screen there. So I've had time to tie a dozen of them. So if you will email the first 12 people, will email Carolina at nmhu.edu with your name and address, then I will, I'll send you one of these flies. This is a type of streamer. It's called a muddler minnow. Really a great fly. I've caught so many fish on this. This is a floating fly. And again, mine's not going to look exactly like that, but pretty close. This fly, these feathers here, if you can see this on your screen, these are turkey feathers. And then this up here, this is deer hair. And that's what makes it float. So this is very buoyant hair. And then there's a couple other little things in there. This is mylar, that gold stuff you see there. So email Carl with your name and address. We'll put one of these in an envelope for the first 12. That's all the time that I had. So thank you very much. If there's any questions, again, I'm really sorry about the videos. I practiced this beforehand and I could see it and hear it, but something with Zoom, I guess, made that difficult during the presentation. So I regret that. Please accept my apologies. But questions from anybody or comments about anything that I've had to say about this? Anyone?
Thanks, Dr. Minner. I do have a question.
Oh, Julie, I think you're muted.
Oh, no, I unmuted. Do you not hear me?
I can hear.
Oh. Peter, I see your name.
Yeah, I had a question. I think Julie had a question, but and I could
Yeah,
hear.
Peter, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
What about typing it in the chat? I can see that.
All
I
right.
have a question. Sounds like a fish story. Well, I got a bunch of those too, but I didn't tell any fish stories on this. So.
Dr. Minner, can you hear me? I think it might be something with his audio.
This. Okay, now I did something. Somebody say something so I can hear you now. I still can't. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Terry. Yeah.
Okay.
Peter, what would you say is the best all-around rod for local waters? You don't want a very big one. The trout here are not that large. So I would say about a 5 weight would be good, maybe 6, and you could do well with that. Now there is a world-class blue water fishery pretty darn close to us, and I get up there when I can. It's a little bit of a drive, the San Juan River. And people from around the world come to fish the San Juan River. And And they are large trout there. I've caught trout there, 8 pounds. I caught an 11-pound rainbow trout there once. I mean, they're huge for rainbow trout. That's very, very large. But like from around here, like the little stream in Quest I was telling you about, a 5 would be good, 6 maybe. I mean, I've caught trout here in the Guyanas River. I mean, they're in there. Now you kind of have to know where to go, and it's often very hard to fish there. So you have to do the roll cast or sometimes the plank, you know. So anyway, any other questions or comments, my friends?
There's a couple more in the chat. I think Julie is asking, do you always throw back your fishes?
Yeah. What streams are you fishing in and around Las Vegas or Mora? From Paul. Well, you know, a lot of times if I have a half hour or something, I literally walk down the street and fish the Guyanas River right there and just walk the river, and you have to find the pools, you know, but there are fish in there. There are trout in there. I don't know if I'd eat them or not, but there are trout in there. And then the Mora River, I fish that. And then if I have a little more time, I especially like to get up to some of the streams in Cuesta. But there are lots of places around here that are really good for fly fishing. So, Curtis, fly fishing's on your bucket list. Well, I tell you, I'll be glad to go with you if we can make the arrangement. I'd take you, buddy, and I can almost guarantee you'll catch something. You get one of those mother minnows, you can catch something with that. And I show you what I know, but you don't have to watch a video. I'll just be there talking with you. Do you throw back all your fish? You know what? I think because of that reflective piece, I find so much joy and pleasure and so much meaning, really. At my age, I hardly keep anything. I catch it, and I thank the fish for being there and letting me catch him or her. And then in almost all cases, I throw them back, let somebody else try for them, you know. Or maybe I'll catch it again, you know. But I wasn't always that way. As a young kid, I had to bring them home, show mom and dad. But not so much anymore. It's not about just that for me anymore. It used to be, but not now. Are you a trout exclusivist when it comes to freshwater? Well, when I grew up in the Midwest, and that was warm water. So there were 3 or 4 ponds around me, farmers' ponds, that I would sneak in when they weren't looking and fish for warm water fish, bass. I love to fly fish for bass. I've caught large bass, 8-pound, 9-pound bass on a fly rod, which is a thrill. And so I've done that. I've also caught other kinds of fish around the world, barramundi in Australia, peacock bass in Central and South America. Some of those are very big. So I'll fish for anything that's there. When we lived in Tennessee, we lived by some really large reservoirs. And I kind of got into fly fishing for carp. Now, carp can be huge. I mean, they can be 40 pounds. Now, I've never caught one that large, but they can be very, very large. I've caught them, 12, 15 pounds on a fly. Now, you better take, your jammies, because you might be there all night trying to get them in without breaking your tippet. But so I've done that too. I love to fish for trout. There's something, a lot of fly fishermen, they're kind of snobs. I try not to be, but it's like, I'll fish for whatever, and it doesn't, but trout's kind of the king for most fly fishermen, and it is for me too. So I really enjoy it. All right, my colleagues, anybody have any other comments? Or again, please forgive me on the technical difficulties, but hopefully the information kind of got through one way or the other. And get those emails into Caro if you want one of those muddler minnows. So.
And if anyone would like the links to the videos that didn't quite work for us today, just email me and I'll be happy to provide you.
Okay, could you send them the Vimeo link and also the YouTube link? Okay, if you're interested, that would be great if you could do that. They're not very long, so. Okay, my friends and colleagues, thank you so much. Again, please forgive us for the video technical difficulties, but it was a lot of fun for me, and thank you for participating. And thank you for your support for HU. Go HU, go Cowboys, go Cowgirls. HU, changing the world one student at a time, making the world better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Minner. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.